Today we're going to create a tower defense-like game. Our game is going to have tanks going across the screen, and we have these turrets here that are going to shoot at them. Now our game is pretty simple. We're just going to have one type of turret and one type of tank. In our case, our tanks are being spawned every 5 seconds, and as you can see, they're getting destroyed before they make it to the escape. Now, we also are adding in a few other things. So for example, if we press the keyboard, we can go ahead and spawn more tanks. So you can see I've got a whole bunch on the screen now going across. And our turrets, we can also just move them around just by dragging them. Now, we can also use the T character on the keyboard, the T key, to spawn multiple turrets. So I can put some turrets along the bottom, maybe along the side here, and maybe at the beginning. And now we can launch a whole bunch of tanks, and we'll see if they can make it across. Now you can go ahead and use any different objects that you want for your tanks and your turrets. You can also set them up so that as the game progresses, the tanks are faster or get spawned more frequently. We can also set it up so that maybe a plane will fly across periodically. That's much more difficult to hit because it's going faster. And we can also set it up so that different turrets have different strengths, and their ammo might destroy a tank more quickly than some of them. So lots of options, lots of ways you can kind of customize and build this game for yourself. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's get started. We'll go ahead and create a new empty project. This one, we're just going to have the screen size and the layout be the same size. So I'm just going to copy my screen size. I'm going to paste it here. So it's 854 by 480. Now you can make yours bigger if you want. That's fine. You can even make it scroll if you wanted to as well. You'll just have to pick an object to scroll. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then the next thing we'll do is we're just going to load in a background just so that we've got something to work with. I've got a couple backgrounds provided. I'm going to use this ground, and I'm using the tiled background here, so we'll just go ahead and put that on the screen. I'm just going to rename this ground. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to load a tank, and this is going to be our guy that goes across the screen. So we'll just go ahead, and I've got a couple of different tanks here. I'm going to use this orange colored one, and I think he's a little too big, so I'm going to scale him down just a little bit. I'm going to make him about that big. I'm going to place him off the screen here and rename him to tank. The next thing that we need is a starting point and an ending point. So these just need to be simple sprites. There's not going to be any image associated with them. I'm going to shade them in a color just so that we can actually see them. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to call this our start. I'm going to make this smaller because we just need a little block. And this is going to be where our tank spawns. So you can put it anywhere along here that you want. Just make sure the center point is actually on the layout itself. So I'm going to put mine right here, and I'm going to call it start. Now we also need an end, so we're going to go ahead and create another sprite, and I'm going to place this over here. I'm going to just use the same color as before, and I'm going to rename this exit. And just like with our start, it just needs to be somewhere over here so that we've got a target to go to. Now I'm going to move mine. I'm going to put mine up at the very top here. I may end up moving this later, but that's where we're going to put it for right now. And we went ahead and named that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have our tanks spawn on the start and then find a path to the exit. And then in between that, we're going to have some obstacles, and then we're going to have some turrets. We're going to now create a obstacle for our tank to navigate through. For this, we're going to create a tiled background, and I'm going to use this crate. You could use the brick as well, or you could use a different object, but I'm going to go ahead and use this crate. Now I'm going to make this essentially one crate width height. Now I know my crate is 32, so I'm just going to type in 32 so that it's exact. And so now you can see that'll be our crate. This will be our obstacle. Let's go ahead and call this crate. And now we're going to put a couple of these crates on the screen, and you could create a maze if you want, or you could kind of do a little path that you want. I'm not going to do anything too fancy. I'm actually just going to put a couple of these in, and I'm going to make a little bit of a funnel. So we'll make this a little bit smaller, and we're going to set this over here. And if you want, you could also turn on your grids at 32 and 32. These are 32 wide, so that'll just make it snap a little bit easier. We'll turn them off when we're done. So I'm going to have it set up like this, and you'll see this bottom one goes all the way to the bottom, so the tank can't go under that, and so it'll be forced to go up here. And then I'm going to create one more right here, and I'm going to scroll over. I'm going to do one more here, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Perfect. And I'm going to do one more like this, so they can't get through. So they can't get through this side here. So I guess I could have extended that. So that's my layout. You can make yours more complicated if you'd like. I just wanted something relatively simple. So let's first start by getting our tank to navigate through, and then we'll add the turrets in later. So some of the things that we need to do is for this create, let's go ahead and add the solid behavior so that our tank can't drive through it. Our tank is going to get a couple of different behaviors. We're going to add the destroy outside of layout, because I don't want one to be created at the beginning of the game, and since it's outside the layout, that'll take care of that. And then I also want to add this pathfind here, and we used the pathfind on another game before, and we're going to use it very similar here on this game. So those will be the two behaviors for our tank. So on the event sheet, let's go ahead and start our tank movement. So for our add event, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to create an every X seconds, and I'm going to use 5 seconds for right now, and we're going to tweak this later, but we're going to say every 5 seconds, we want to, on our start, we want to spawn another object, and we're going to spawn that tank. And that's going to be every 5 seconds, we're going to create a new one. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to tell that tank that we want to find a path to the exit. Now this doesn't support an object, so we actually have to type in exit and then use .x and then exit.y. So that'll find a path through our maze. The second event that we're going to create is we're going to tell the tank that as long as there is a path on path found, we want it to move along that path. So we're going to say go ahead and move along path. Now this will just allow it to automatically move along that path as long as that path exists. Now it's possible that our path might get blocked and it can't find a path, in which case it won't actually move. And we may see that in our game, especially if we spawn too many tanks. That's fine. It's not going to cause any big harm. So that's how we'll tell it to move along that path once one has been found. So let's go ahead and test this and just see if the pathfinding part works. All right, so we have to wait 5 seconds for it to show up. And there's our tank, and you can see it's moving along our path, and it's going right straight to our exit. Perfect. Now we don't have this being destroyed yet, and we don't have anything to kind of control the tanks or kill the tanks or anything like that. So this is working perfect now, so we'll go ahead and leave that. We'll go back and we'll add some more logic. Let's go ahead and add some logic so when our tanks get to our destination, they just get destroyed. Otherwise, they'll just build up and they'll all just sit there. So we can go ahead and say on tank is the event, and we can use this one that says on arrived. So this means the tank has arrived at whatever that destination was, and what we're going to do is just destroy that tank. So we may want to keep track of those later. We may want to say how many made it through, or this would actually be where you failed the game because you let one get by, in which case you may delete a value from your lives, or the game may just end right there. But for now, we're just going to delete those. The other thing that we want to do is let's set our start and our exit to invisible so we don't see these blue blocks. We can see them here at development time, but then when we run the game, we don't want those to show up. So now that we have our tank moving across, let's go ahead and add our turret. So let's create a new sprite, and we're going to place this off the screen, and we're going to load up a turret. I've got a few different ones, so you can go ahead and pick the one that you like best. Make sure your turret is pointing horizontally to the right, because that's the way it's going to shoot. So if yours is different, you just need to rotate it. Otherwise, it'll shoot out of its side instead of the front. So we'll go ahead and rename this to turret. And then we want to add the turret behavior. So we'll go ahead and add that. And then on the properties, you can tweak these some more if you'd like, but the rate of fire, this decides how many times per second it shoots. 1 is actually pretty slow, so let's make ours 0.5. And the other thing that we're going to change is so now the way we're going to have this set up, rather than having it super complicated with different ways to earn turrets and so on, we're just going to set it up so that there are some turrets on the screen, and then you can just press a key in order to add a new one. So to start with, let's just go ahead and move this on the screen, and let's turn our grid off so that we can get it lined up. We don't want it to be over top of our wall, because the bullets will bounce off of it and cause some weird effects. So we want it kind of hanging over at least half. And then I'm going to put a couple of these in. So I'm going to put another one down here, and I'm going to put another one up here on this corner. Now these will all work independent of each other. And then we're going to also set it in so that you can just add more anytime you want. But for right now, this is how we're going to lay this out. Now our turrets need a bullet to shoot. Let's go ahead and just create a round sprite. So let's create a sprite. We'll place it off the screen. Let's make this smaller. Let's make this 15 by 15. And then we can zoom in a little bit. And then let's use the paint to do a bullet or a circle that's 15. Now I'm going to make mine red. So let's pick red. And I'm going to place that right in the middle. I'm going to close that. So now we should have a little bullet. And then let's label this bullet. Now our bullet is also going to get the bullet behavior. So let's go ahead and add bullet. And then on the properties, I'm going to turn this bounce off solids on, because I want ours to bounce off of the walls. It's just going to give us a nice effect. Especially since we've got a small narrow channel for our tanks to go through. Now let's set our turret up to shoot at our tanks. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add an image point for our bullets. So let's go into the turret. Let's go ahead and add an image point, and we want to put it out front here so that it's coming out the front of the turret. So we'll go ahead and close that. Now on the event sheet, we need to add an event, and we need to use the on start of layout, and we need to tell the system that the turret is going to shoot at the tank. So we want to go in and we want to say turret, and we want to say add an object to target, and we're going to pick the tank. So this is going to say, okay, we want the turrets to be shooting at the tanks. So that's going to be, we only need to do this once, so we just need to do it on the start of layout. Now to get the turret to shoot, what we're going to do is we're going to say turret, and then we're going to say has or on shoot, and then we're going to go ahead and use the turret spawn an object, and that object is going to be the bullet, and we're going to use image point 1, the one we just created right in front of our turret. So let's give this a test and see if it works. All right, we'll spawn a tank here in just a second. We still got that set to 5 seconds. Now you see the turret is now aiming at our tank and firing. Now we didn't put any collisions in yet, so right now they're not harming our tank at all, but you can see those turrets one at a time as they're coming within range or go ahead and turn towards our target and then fire our bullets. Now that we have the base of our game, let's add a couple of options here for us to tweak the layout. So the first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and add the keyboard and the mouse so that we can interact with each of them. So we're going to add mouse, and then we're going to add keyboard. Now each of them, we're going to put some events in. So for the keyboard one, let's go ahead and say add a new event, keyboard, on key press, and let's use the space bar. And what we want to do is every time the space bar is pressed, we want to spawn another tank. So this is something that we can do for debugging purposes. So we're just going to do this operation right here. So we're going to copy these and we're going to paste them right here. So when the keyboard is pressed on the start, we're going to spawn a tank, and then we're going to tell that tank to find a path. So the second thing that we're going to add is we want to be able to move those turrets around the screen, and we want to be able to create new turrets as well. So let's go ahead and say we're going to create another event, and we're going to say keyboard on key pressed, and when we press the T button for turret, we're going to create a new turret wherever the mouse is. So right here on key press of T, we're going to say add an action, system, and we're just going to create an object, and that's going to be a turret. And our XY is going to be where the mouse is. So we'll use mouse.x and then mouse.y. So whenever we press the T key, it's going to just automatically create a turret wherever our mouse is at. So let's go ahead and run that and see if those two keyboard things work. All right, let's start by launching more of our tank. So I'm going to press the space bar and we'll see if we get more tanks. All right, so every time I press it, a new tank gets created. And as you can see, the paths right now are all the same, so that worked out great. So now let's go ahead and press the T, and I'm going to put the mouse right about here, and I'm going to press T, and we should see a turret get created. Perfect. Now this turret automatically is going to work. Now you see I've got it placed at a point where it's on the wrong side of the wall, so the bullets are actually bouncing off the wall. So we need the ability to move these turrets around. So let's go ahead and add that now. It's really easy to move these turrets. All we need to do is we need to add another behavior, and we're simply going to add this drag and drop. So let's add the drag and drop. And now when we run this, we can move those turrets around just by clicking them and dragging them. And this will work for even these that are by default on the screen. So now I can press the T button and get a turret created. Now you can see it's above the crates again, so its bullets are just bouncing off. So now I can just drag it down here, and now it can shoot at our tank as it goes by. Excellent. So now I think we need to add some logic in so that our tanks can get destroyed if they get hit 5 times with 5 bullets. So let's go back to our game. And we're going to use something called a local instance variable. Now, we've used variables in the past, but we've never used a local instance variable. A local instance variable is a variable just like all the others, but each object has their own copy. So for example, if we had 10 tanks on the screen and we had an instance variable on the tank, each one of those 10 tanks can have a different value. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to click our tank, and to create an instance variable, it's right here. And it works exactly like a regular variable, so we're going to click that. We're going to add a variable, and we're just going to call it hit, or hits. And this is going to be how many times the tank gets hit before it gets destroyed. Now I'm going to use 5. You can use a different value, so I'm going to say 5. So now as soon as that, every time a bullet hits our tank, we're going to subtract 1. When it hits 0, we're going to destroy the tank. So we'll go ahead and click OK. Then we'll close this. The way we use these variables is exactly the same as a global variable. So on the event sheet, we're going to add another event, and we're going to say tank on collision with another object. And this time it's going to be the bullet. So when the bullet hits the tank, we want to subtract 1 from the bullet's instance variable. So we're going to say tank, and you'll see right here, just like with our global variables, it says instance variables. We're going to say subtract from. And we just have 1, so it's hits, and we're going to say 1. So each time it gets hit, we're going to subtract 1. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add another event, and we're going to say when that instance variable, compare instance variable, when that hits 0, and I'm going to say actually if it's less than or equal to 0, just in case it gets hit twice really fast, it may actually be -1. So if it's less than or equal to 0, that means it's been hit 5 times or more. then what we're going to do is we're going to destroy that tank. All right, so now the tank has to be hit 5 times and then it'll get destroyed. Let's go ahead and run that and see if it works. All right, so I'm going to press the space bar. It'll start launching some tanks here. So we can't see because we don't have any explosions or anything, so we can't count them, but we can see that they are getting destroyed. So we know they're getting hit 5 times. So that looks like it's working perfect. Now the bullets continue to go. We probably don't want that to happen. We probably want the bullets to also get destroyed. So let's go ahead and add that. And then let's also add a small particles so that we can see that our tank was being hit. So right here on collision, when we subtract 1 from the tank, let's add another action, and let's just say bullet destroyed. And now let's add a particle, and I'm going to just use a small green square. You can use an explosion as well if you'd like, but or actually I'm not going to use green. I'm going to use kind of a tan color, kind of like my cannon or my tank is. So I'm going to make it a very small sprite. So I'm going to click the resize button and I'm going to make it, well, let's do 10 and 10. And so it's just this really small thing that'll look like parts of my tank are coming off. And then we need to change a few of those properties. So we're going to set it to 1 shot. I want far fewer. I'm going to set the size to 15 as well. And then I also don't want a huge rate. So let's do 20. And I'm going to just adjust this cone to about 90 so it spreads a little bit more. So this is going to come out of the front of the tank. So I'm going to place this over here. And on the event sheet right here, where we have those collisions, let's go ahead and say tank spawn another object, and let's go ahead and spawn those particles. All right, so let's run this, and we should now see our tank get hit, and we should see that the bullets also get destroyed. So there we go. We can see the tanks are getting hit, and if they get hit 5 times, now that our bullets are not, now that the bullets aren't getting destroyed, are getting destroyed, you can see that it's a lot harder to shoot those tanks. They're getting a lot further down our path before they get destroyed. But they are getting destroyed. Our game's looking pretty good. I think the only thing left to do is maybe add some score so that we know how many tanks have either escaped or how many have been destroyed. So let's go ahead and create a score right here of how many tanks have been destroyed, and then over here on the right, let's go ahead and add one that says how many have escaped. So to do that, let's go ahead and add 2 text boxes. And we'll go ahead and set their fonts a little bit larger. So I'm going to use 22, and I'm also going to set the color to white, and I'm going to set the default value to 0. So this will be how many tanks get destroyed. Now I'm going to go ahead and create another one on the right. I'm just going to clone this so that it looks the same. And I'm going to set the alignment on this one to right so that my number shows up on that side. Now let's go ahead and name each of these. So this first one is going to be, let's call it tanks destroyed. And over here, let's call this one tanks escaped. Now, in addition to those text boxes, we need some variables to store those. So let's go ahead and create 2 global variables. And we'll call this one tanks destroyed. And we'll create another one. It's called tanks escaped. Spell it correctly. There we go. Now we also want to set up a system every tick so we can update those values. And on every tick, we're going to say tanks destroyed, and we're going to say set text, and we're going to use tanks destroyed, the variable. And we're going to do the same with the tanks escaped. We're going to say set text, and we're going to use tanks escaped. And then the last thing is we need to keep track of those 2 variables. So right here, where a tank gets destroyed, where its hit count is less than or equal to 0, let's say system add 2, and we'll do the tanks destroyed, because those are when we've destroyed them. And when they escape is going to be this one up here when they arrive at their path. So let's do the same thing, and we're going to say add 2, and we're going to pick the other one, tanks escaped. So let's go ahead and run that and see if our counters are working. All right, so let's launch a bunch of tanks and see what happens. All right, so we've got at least 1 destroyed, and we can see a whole bunch escaped. So we had 2 that got destroyed and 8 that got away. So there's another one that didn't get away. So I'm going to add a couple more turrets right along the bottom here, make it a little bit harder. And then let's launch a whole bunch of tanks and see what happens. Excellent. Well, good. So the other thing we can do is we can tweak some of these properties. So let's go back to the game, and let's go to our layout. And some of the things that we can change are like our tank speed, for example. We may want to make them go a little bit faster, and we may want to set it up so that as time goes on, they go a little bit increasingly faster. And we can also set on our turrets what their range is and how far the bullets, or how fast the bullets go. And this is another property here that might be interesting to change, and that is whether or not it targets the first tank or if it targets the nearest tank. So you might want to play around with each of those settings. And then the last one, I am going to turn this on, is this predictive aim. If we say yes, the turrets are going to be a lot more accurate with when they shoot. If your tanks go very fast, then your turrets may shoot to where the tanks are at and miss, where now it's going to predict where they're going to be at when it hits the tank. So it'll just make it a little bit more likely that your tank is going to get hit. So let's go ahead and spawn a bunch. Now our game doesn't have a long screen, it's a very small screen, so our tanks don't have a long ways to go. All right, so there we have it. We've got a tower defense-like game. Ours is a little bit different than the original. We just have the one turret type, but you could easily add multiple turret types, and you could have different features for each of them. For example, a bigger one might actually cause more damage to our tanks than a smaller one, or we could also adjust the range, so those that shoot very, very close versus those that could shoot a long ways away. We could also add more tanks. So right now we just have the one tank, but we could easily spawn multiple tanks, or we could have planes fly across, or we could have 2 or 3 different starting points and randomly pick which one it actually starts from. But this is the base of the game, and you can go ahead and explore from here. So with that, go ahead and build your own creative version, and let me know how it goes.